For centuries, Hebrew life revolved around the static, unmoving stone of the temple. But in the first century, that stability met a sudden pressure, a new movement spreading across the Mediterranean, too fast for traditional structures to contain. This rapid expansion created a rift between ancient laws and a new reality. To prevent a total break from the past, the early community required a document that could translate the logic of the Hebrew scriptures into a framework for a global movement. This is the specific role of the Gospel of Matthew, a text often identified in the Tamil tradition as Rajaveen Narchethi Nol, the King's Gospel. To understand why this document became the foundation for the early church, we have to look at how it was built, analyzing its internal geography, its specific use of prophecy, and the unique vocabulary it uses to organize its followers. These features suggest that Matthew is less a standard biography and more a structured argument, designed to provide a legal and theological continuity for a faith in transition. The need for such a document became absolute in 70 AD, when the Roman army destroyed the temple in Jerusalem. They didn't just level a building, they removed the physical center of gravity for the Jewish faith. For Jewish Christians, this was an identity crisis. Their validation as the people of God had always been tied to the temple's rituals and presence. Without it, they were a community without a home. They needed a foundation that was portable, a system of belief and authority that remained valid even when the stone altars were gone. The King's Gospel addressed this vacuum directly. It argued that the authority once housed in the temple had been transferred to a person, and by extension, to the community that followed him. The identity of the person who assembled this argument is never explicitly stated in the text, yet the writing contains a very specific set of characteristics. First, the author demonstrates an elite command of the ancient Hebrew scriptures. The text relies on over 100 direct and indirect references to the Old Testament, suggesting someone with advanced scribal or legal training. This is paired with an intimate familiarity with localized Palestinian Jewish vernacular. The author uses idioms and cultural shorthand that would be natural for someone living and working within that specific tax and legal environment. There is also a recurring focus on Capernaum. In chapters 4, 8, 9, and 17, the author includes precise details about the town's geography and its local customs, marking it as a clear center of operations. These traits, meticulous record-keeping, localized knowledge, and high literacy, align with the background of a man the text itself identifies as a tax collector, Matthew, also known as Levi. In the ancient world, tax collectors were among the few who combined daily Palestinian life with the rigorous administrative and linguistic skills required to organize a document of this complexity. To prove Jesus held kingly authority, Matthew employs a structural device, 10 fulfillments. He systematically links moments in Jesus' life to exact Old Testament wording. Matthew cites Isaiah 7:14 as prophetic precedent for the virgin birth, matching ancient text to Jesus. When Jesus is taken into Egypt, Matthew cites Hosea 11:1, turning a moment of exile into a calculated fulfillment of the messianic profile. Even the tragedy within the village of Bethlehem is framed through this lens, as Matthew quotes Jeremiah 31:15 to show that even in crisis, the narrative was unfolding according to a recorded plan. This is more than storytelling. It is a meticulous cross-referencing intended to satisfy a skeptical audience that Jesus met every legal requirement of the promised Messiah. But proving Jesus' identity was only the first step. Matthew then introduces a concept found in no other gospel, the formal establishment of a new institution. He uses the Greek word ekklesia, or church. While other writers focused on the person of Jesus, Matthew focused on the organization Jesus left behind. By introducing this term, the text shifts the focus from a single ethnic group to a called-out assembly that could exist anywhere in the world. Prophetic proof established that Jesus was king. The ekklesia gave that king a sovereign domain that didn't depend on the walls of Jerusalem. To maintain this borderless domain, Matthew provides a set of core principles for how the community should conduct itself. First, the account of the Magi illustrates that the king's authority is universal, drawing worship from those outside the traditional Jewish boundaries. Second, The Sermon on the Mount establishes a new ethical standard, where a follower's internal character must be the source of their outward actions. Third, prayer is moved from the public, ritualistic space of the temple into a private, relational conversation. Finally, through the faith of a Roman centurion, the text shows that this king's power is accessible to anyone, regardless of their nationality. Together, these teachings provided the new community with a code of behavior that allowed them to function as a unified people, even when scattered across the empire. Matthew's work succeeded by joining two distinct ideas. He anchored the movement in the undeniable history of Old Testament prophecy, while simultaneously launching a new, practical code for living. The result presented Jesus not just as a figure of the past, but as a living king and teacher whose authority continued through his followers. This combination of evidence and instruction gave the early church the tools to survive the loss of their physical temple. The King's Gospel provided the bridge. It ensured that the ancient foundations of the faith remained intact, even as the community itself grew into a global institution. Rather than a physical book or document. Record a life, they present a specific genre. The evangelists secured the survival of the early church's